Turnbull, and I am running for the U.S. Senate representing the state of Idaho. I love America. I love what it stands for, the freedoms, the opportunities. We the people, now more than ever, must demand our elected officials work within the limits set forth in the Constitution. I promise, if elected, I will serve you with honor, integrity, and urgency. There is much to do. We the people can do it. My name is Ramont Turnbull, and I approve this message. Good evening. Can you hear? Okay. Thank you very much for coming. My name is Ramont Turnbull.
You can see your locker.
We got it. We can just go. Just leave it here for me. I'm running for the U.S. Senate against incumbent Senator Mike Crapo. I live in Meridian, Idaho, in the Treasure Valley with my sweet wife Cindy, who's here with me tonight, and we also with two of our children. I love Idaho, and I love our country. I fell in love with Idaho many years ago on Christmas Day. We had relocated to this state many years ago, and it was a Friday, so it was a normal day that I thought the stores would be open, because where we moved from, the stores would have been open on Christmas Day. But I forgot some batteries. I know none of you have ever done that on Christmas Day, but I had forgotten batteries, and as a result, I had to go to the grocery store. So I thought I'd run over to Winco and get some, and they were closed. And then I ran over to Fred Meyer. Certainly they would be open, and they weren't open either. Then I went to Albertsons. They weren't open, and it hit me right there that this is a good place, and I kind of fell in love with it. I did go to Maverick and get the batteries, but I did apologize to the lady who was there that she had to work on Christmas Day. But it was then that it dawned on me that this is quite the place. And then on another occasion, I rafted the Lochsaw River up on outside of Grangeville. I've done it a couple of times now, and when I came home from doing that the first time, I said to my wife, hey, we're not leaving this place ever. The beauty up there just is amazing. So I appreciate the opportunity and hope that I might have the opportunity to represent this great state, the state that I love. I also love my country. I have a father who was an immigrant from England. I have a mother who grew up in pretty dire poverty in Oklahoma, and so they taught me all the great things about this country and about the wonderful opportunities that are here. And I never once heard a discouraging word, if you will, about this country and the place we live. And they carved out a very nice living for themselves. It took many years, but they sacrificed for us kids, and what a difference it has made for us and me throughout my life. So I appreciate you being here tonight. Wanted to share some things here. Don't want to take all night, obviously, but I do have some things I want to share and let you know what I'm about and what I believe in. After the Constitution was signed on September 17, 1787, they then had to get 9 states to ratify the document. So James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, and John Jay wrote the Federalist Papers, which is a set of 85 essays that explain features of the Constitution and help the states as they work through the ratification process. Federalist number 45 states the powers delegated by the Constitution to the federal government are few and defined. I am running for the U.S. Senate because the limits, or those powers that are few and defined, have been forgotten. My platform is very concise. Strict adherence to the limits of the Constitution, and any legislation I vote for must be good for individuals, households, families, and businesses. And it must be constitutional. There are a lot of good ideas that are unconstitutional. Those good ideas can be addressed by the states and the people as stated in the 10th Amendment. When I refer to good ideas that are unconstitutional, I am not referring to something bad. I am referring to a good idea or an action or a program that the federal government is not authorized to address per the limits defined in the Constitution. However, the states and the people are certainly authorized to address it. The states and the people are very capable. The federal government needs to get out of the way and focus on their own responsibilities. They have plenty to do without butting into the business that rightfully belongs to the states. Today we see the federal government extending their reach to all aspects of our daily lives. It's like a parent doing everything for their grown children. It's not a good look. The Constitution does not give us our freedoms, but the Constitution protects our freedoms, our God-given freedoms and rights. Freedoms and rights are lost when the federal government overextends its reach into areas it does not belong, such as the Department of Education, mandated health care coverage, among others. If elected, I promise to defend the Constitution. I promise I will never dishonor your trust, nor the trust of Idaho, nor of the United States. I promise I will be informed and keep you informed. I promise to work with a sense of urgency and never get comfortable in the office. I promise to be relentless in my efforts to serve you and honor the promises made. I may not win a lot of friends at first, but I will earn respect as I keep my promises. And with that respect, I'll find those that share my beliefs, and together we will make a difference. There is much to do. Together with we the people, we can get it done. To do so, I will use the best skill my Heavenly Father has given me: collaboration. I love bringing the right people together for a common cause. As a business manager, as a business development manager for a technology firm in the Treasure Valley, I bring together our engineers, our scientists, and our PhDs with those of my customers to develop new and amazing technologies. The people I work with are so talented at what they do. I am able to pool their knowledge and skills and help my clients as they diagnose and cure cancer, pediatric blindness, and develop other critical medical technologies. So let me address a few items here. First, taxes. Individuals, households, families, and businesses know best how to spend their money. We need to end the government's unlimited use of our earnings. Government should take only what is necessary to meet their limited responsibilities. I will use the word limited quite a bit in this talk because the Constitution limits what they're supposed to do. Lower taxes help everyone, especially the federal government. This has been proven on numerous occasions under multiple administrations. Ronald Reagan, John F. Kennedy, and others have applied these principles with great success. Why do we have to relearn this lesson? When businesses are taxed less, they can hire more people. They also add research and development, which requires more people. The R&D leads to new product lines, which require more people. More people paying modest taxes lead to more tax revenues available for the federal government to meet their limited obligations, stay within budget, and reduce our national debt. I have a mantra. It's called lower our taxes and get out of the way. The American work ethic and entrepreneurial spirit will always build the economy faster, better, and stronger than any government designed program. And shame on Washington for their relentless efforts to increase tax burdens on we the people. I have a short story here. It's called Ease the Burden. Some of you may have heard it. Wonderful things happen to an economy when the tax burden is eased. A story is told of an ancient kingdom ruled by an honorable king. He was beloved by his subjects. Upon his death, his son became king. Unfortunately, his son was not an honorable king. He laid heavy tax burdens on the people, With those taxes, he built large buildings and homes to support his riotous lifestyle. He built a beautiful throne and many prisons. Those who would not or could not pay taxes were imprisoned and put to work for their support. Those who refused to work were put to death. After 42 years, the people rebelled and cast the king and his family out of the kingdom. Many years later, a descendant of the king assembled an army and went to war against the kingdom. After many battles, he gained power over the land and established himself as king. But, unlike the previous king, this new and wiser king eased the tax burden and gained favor with the people, who then anointed him king. Under his reign, the people of the kingdom grew rich in buildings, gold and silver, grain, flocks and herds, because of the things that were restored to them. Again, lower our taxes or ease the burden and get out of the way. Second, term limits. Much is said about the need for congressional term limits. Polls show as much as 82% of the people want them. There is even a company called U.S. Term Limits pushing for this. At the very core of the Constitution is the active participation of we the people. If we closely read the Constitution, we will see that we already have term limits. We the people are the term limits. We elect senators and representatives and give them our consent to represent us. If they fail to do so properly, then we exercise our power at the ballot box and vote them out of office. An amendment for term limits is just a Band-Aid. It will never get through Congress. The real cure is for we the people to read the Constitution and understand the power that we have. It would take only 6 years to completely replace Congress. We can start right here in Idaho. A couple of other items I added over the last couple of days. One is the right to life. There's a lot of talk right now about the abortion issue. My wife and I have been married 40 years. We have 9 children. So you can probably guess my position on the issue. But I just, as a father and as a human being, I cannot understand how people can fail to protect the weakest of the weak. And I'll leave it at that. But you should have no doubts about my stand on it. The Second Amendment. I applaud the NRA and all the other responsible gun groups for their vigilance. We will always have to be vigilant. There are all sorts of anti-gun groups that are relentless in their efforts to take away our guns, and they will lie to do it. I have lived in Colombia, I have worked in Mexico, and I have visited Chicago. All 3 ban weapons except in special circumstances. How ironic that of all my travels, those are probably the 3 most dangerous places I've ever been. By the way, we have several guns at our home. In closing, I have been respectfully asked about my experience with statements such as, "But you're not a lawyer," or "You don't have much experience in Washington." But, as mentioned before, I have been married 40 years to my wonderful wife, and we have 9 beautiful children and 11 even more beautiful grandchildren. Among those 9 children, there are differing views and strong personalities, but somehow we seem to get along pretty well. Not perfectly, but pretty well. I think that makes me the ultimate politician. You can't hurt my feelings, you can't threaten me, my kids have already tried that, and I'm over it. On the good side, I paid for my education, earning my degree in accounting from a top 10 accounting university. I worked my way through college washing high-rise windows, so I'm not afraid of high places. I lived in Colombia for 2 years and worked in Mexico for 15 years. I'm fluent in Spanish, and I have seen firsthand what poor political leadership and policies can do to countries and to people I love. I will work hard, I will be prepared, I will be where I'm supposed to be, and I will be there on time. So, Getting back to the questions about experience in Washington and no law degree, I will answer those questions with this question. How's that working out for us? I know that any bill arriving on my desk had better not take more than a couple of hours to read. The entire Constitution, including the amendments, takes less than 2 hours to read. No bill should be any longer. If a bill requires 2.5 reams of paper and a shopping cart to deliver it, then I bet it is full of stuff that should not be included. I originally was going to say that there's more pork in that than at the local Costco, but I changed it. I think every member of Congress should have a sign on their door that says, if it's not in the dock being the Constitution, if it's not in the dock, please don't even knock. With God's help, I can do this. I worked for 15 years in Mexico in the precision spring and wire form business. Springs are an old technology. I will tell you that if you ever open a master lock with a key and you turn it and the shackle pops up, that's my spring inside there. And when you go home tonight, you will push that little red button right by your hip to get out of your seatbelt. There's springs in there. Those are my springs too. So anyway. But that's an old technology. They used springs on telegraph machines. So I needed to make a change. Not long ago, I made a huge career jump to the world of fiber optics. Not phone fibers, but the kind that are used with lasers and are found in most laser medical applications. I had to study a lot to become competent. It was a huge leap, but I studied and worked hard and have become skilled in this area enough to lead our company in sales orders by a healthy margin. Again, with God's help and support of my wife, my family, and my friends, I can do this. If this message resonates with you, I need your help. Please send emails and texts to 7 or even 70 of your friends and family and ask them to do the same. I need to flood this state with my name. I have both sides, forgive me, I have pass along cards in the back. Please take some, take all you want. We have plenty. Share them with your friends. Take pictures of both sides and text them to your friends. Almost everyone has a phone. Please visit our website at turnbull4ussenate.com. That's Turnbull, F-O-R, ussenate.com. Ask your friends to do the same, and please be sure to vote May 17th, 2 weeks from yesterday. Thank you very much, and may God bless America. This is my sweet wife, Cindy.
Okay, I don't usually get up and speak, but tonight as we were driving out here, I thought, you know what? Because we're new to the political arena of things, I felt like I need to give people a little better understanding of who my husband really is. He is a wonderful man, and I've had a lot of fun. We both have had a lot of fun campaigning and meeting people. We have met some really amazing people, and it has been a really joyous time for us. But it has also been a ton of work, a ton of time, and we are exhausted, but we keep marching forward because we know how important this is. As I have been passing out some of his pass-along cards to people, I, explained things to them, and I told them, and I said he's a good, honest man. And I've had a couple people look at me and say, "Oh, well, you have to say that because you're your husband." And I looked at them and I said, "No, I don't have to say that. I say it because it's true." And I thought about that. I thought, I have put up so many signs through the wind, the snow, the hail, the cold, the bitter cold. Me and my 82-year-old mother have been and traveled through this state and have seen so much beauty. And I'm thinking, no, I do this because he is a good man. another woman, as I approached her and handed her one of his pass-along cards, she looked at me after I told her that he was running for U.S. Senate. He was running against Senator Mike Crapo and that kind of stuff. And she looked at me, she says, what is one of his qualities that you like, that's your favorite, that you like the most? And to me, I'm sitting there thinking, well, crud, he's honest, he's hardworking, he's trustworthy, he keeps his promises. You know, I'm just thinking of all these things, and I was quiet for a while, and I was helping her like load her groceries into her car as I'm trying to think. I said, I'm sorry I'm taking so long, but I said, he has a lot of qualities that I really like, and I'm just trying to think. And she said, oh, that's fine. And I said, but honestly, I said, I'm being selfish, but I said, I love how he treats me. He's very respectful to me. I said, I know he loves me dearly. I said, I don't ever question his love for me. And she says, I love that. She says, that's wonderful. But then I got thinking about the things about keeping your promises. And I thought about this story that, and it's a true one. When he was working for that company, the Springs and Wire Farm Company, they didn't always have the best prices. But he did promise the customers, if you go with us, I promise you that your production lines will never be down for lack of product from us. And one day, that was put to the test. I had taken him to the hospital for an outpatient procedure. I picked him up. As we were leaving, they told us, now remember, take it easy today, take the rest of the day off, maybe even tomorrow, don't do any heavy lifting, this kind of stuff. We thought, no problem. And on our way home, he got a phone call from Auditing, which is one of their biggest customers, located in Mexico City. And they said, we have enough product today, but by tomorrow morning or by tomorrow afternoon, we will not. And he says, okay. He goes, thank you for letting me know. He immediately walked into the house. He called his company. He told them the problem. He says, when did the shipment go out? When will it get there? He realized it was going to be a day or two late. And so he immediately booked a flight for LA. There he met his boss with 600 pounds of product in suitcases so that he could transport it. Took a flight from LAX to Texas, from Texas to Mexico City, and was there in the morning before they opened that day. He also had to do that several times for Master Lock, another one of their large. Go, get product, drive through the night to Nogales, Mexico, and be there in the morning before they opened that day. The man worked for this company for 15 years. He did not enjoy that job at all, but it put food on our table. And he honestly downright hated that job. But he did it, and he kept his promises. Kept his promises. When I think about being trustworthy, when we've done this campaign, I can tell you that he has felt inspired to do this. He was prompted to do this. He was prompted in November, December, January, but didn't tell me till the middle of February. And so therefore we had to scramble. And I told him, I said, this is a huge undertaking. I said, you are like David and Goliath. And he says, I know, honey. He goes, I know. I said, so, I said, this is, I couldn't believe it. So then I said, you're going to have to pray about this. And he looked at me, and he's not an emotional person, and he got a bit emotional, and he says, honey, he goes, I already have. I knew, because I've known my husband for 41 years, that wasn't him. And I knew that what he felt was what we needed to move on. In that process, he wanted to be honest with his company. He told them that what he was doing, as we were getting going on this, and we had already spoken to people, we had already passed out stuff and things, and we had already signed the papers and brought his name on the ballot and all that kind of stuff. And they came to him and they were really excited, very excited. And then they approached him the next day and they said, you know what, we've got a little glitch here. You may have to take a leave of absence. And he was sick. absolutely sick inside. He thought, I cannot quit now. There is no way I am quitting. And I thought, yeah, and we need your income. You can't take a leave of absence. So we decided to take it as a matter of prayer and fasting that night. He came up with his, I guess, whatever he was going to go, he was going to have to meet with their attorneys the next day over Zoom. So he did. He went there, he pled his case, met with attorneys, people that do not even know him, and told them how he felt. And they came back to him and they said, they came to him, they said, we'll get back to you we'll get back to you by the end of the day and let you know how we feel. 6 hours later, they got back to him and they told him, if you can do this, 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 and this, we will let you go ahead and do that and still remain doing your job. We were just like so relieved, so relieved. And then his boss, who is not a religious man in any way, shape, or form, told him, he says, somebody up high wants you doing this, because he goes, this is unheard of. And he says, this doesn't happen. And he goes, and I'm not talking about the higher ups in the company. So I can tell you there have been doors closed several times, and we've always watched something open, and we stick our foot through, and we just keep going forward on this thing. There's been times in the company where they've asked him to have parts and things that have different coatings and stuff like that. Sometimes they're asking for they have a hard time trying to find some of this stuff, and it never fails. They always come to him because they know that he does not ever give up. He will hunt and hunt and hunt until he finds what it is that they need within a few days and comes back with it for them. He does not give up. Another thing that I wanted to say is my husband loves God. He approaches him every day in prayer. He first thanks him for what he has and his gratitude for it. But he also asks and petitions for his help on how to handle things. And he has done that throughout this campaign also. And then he goes and lives his life in a manner that would be pleasing unto him, so that he can show his love and gratitude for what he has in this life. I think that all of you can agree with me that we have too many elected officials in Washington who have lost sight of that, who have lost sight of who God is and what he does. He takes ordinary people who believe in him and who trust him, and he helps them to do extraordinary things. And I believe my husband's one of those great people. We need some ordinary people in Washington who have struggled to put food on their tables and know what it's like, because so many of them do not know what it's like, and they do not follow. We send them there to represent us, and they are not representing us how we feel that they should. So the last thing I just wanted to say is so when it comes to me saying that, I have to say those things because he's my husband, I don't have to say those things because he's my husband. I say them because they're true. He is a good man. He's a wonderful man. He's not perfect, I will tell you that. But he also takes direction. I've known men that won't take direction from a wife, but he does. There's times where I'll say, honey, could you, like, maybe soften that a little bit, or do that, or maybe you could work on this, or something like that. And he does the same to me. And he doesn't take it and think, oh, well, that's just her, she doesn't know what she's talking about. But he will come back to me later and say, hey, you know what, I really appreciate you giving me that direction, I needed that. So he is a humble man, and he is willing to do what is necessary. I know he can do this. I know he has the abilities, and he has the drive and what it takes to be the kind of senator that you would need for Idaho and for the people, and to know what your needs are. And I really appreciate you all being here tonight and for letting us talk to you. And thank you very much.
All right, well. Here, I'll take it. All right, so hopefully I don't get too much feedback on these. I did try to make the volume a little bit better in the back, and that might not have worked. But anyways, I wanted to say thank you for Ramont and Cindy. I do know that from my personal experience with my folks that Dad couldn't do it without my mom. So that was very real to me, and I want to thank you for sharing that. Okay. And with that, I think is now the most fun part of the night, where we get to grill you and ask you all the questions. So please come back up here, and I'll walk the mic around. And who wants to be first?
Let me just correct one thing. She said I'm relentless. She failed to mention one thing. I had to ask this lady 4 times to marry me. 4 times. Separate times. So anyway.
That's okay. I had to wait 4 years for my husband to marry me, but finally asked him and he accepted. Okay, you're going to go to DC. What is going to keep you from turning into a liberal, and how long do you plan to be there?
That's, I wouldn't, I can't say that because it has happened to some. I wouldn't do it. What would keep me from doing it is sitting right over there and sitting at home, my kids, especially the one, I have a son that's down in Panama right now. He definitely wouldn't allow that to happen. But more than anything would be my wife and the core beliefs that I've had from my parents from day one. My father saw and my mother saw what bad governance can do, and what bad choices can do in the lives of their families. So that's what would keep me grounded. I have thought about that. How do I stay grounded? It's right over there in the white shirt.
And how long do you plan to serve?
Oh, 12 years. Maybe 6, but probably 12. I told one of my boys, I said, I'm just 6 years, I just want to get it and get out. And he said, Dad, you got to stay there 12, just stay 12, you'll be fine. Because after that, I want to be the commissioner of Major League Baseball. Okay? I would love to do that. I wasn't good enough to play. That was my original dream job, was to play baseball. But if I could be the commissioner, I got plans. So anyway.
All right.
You're refreshing. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
You mentioned the government agencies. It's no secret that the CDC is having an effect on the Department of Education, which is now coming down through our schools with the SEL and the CRT and everything else. What do you plan to do about these other government agencies?
Switch mics real quick. I think this one's a little bit picking up better.
Right. I would not vote for anything that would benefit those types of groups. I would, I know that there was a bill that came out 2 years ago to defund the Department of Education. I'd vote for that in a heartbeat. And What is interesting about that one also is that I was speaking to a lady who is a teacher. I want to say she was here in Idaho Falls. She's a teacher, and she begged me to do whatever I could to get rid of the Department of Education. And you don't usually hear that from the teachers. They like their unions and all this stuff. But yeah, I would, in a heartbeat. That's not a good group. It's a waste. I think their budget is close to about $80 billion, and for what? That's one of those things I talked about, that the Constitution well, they're not supposed to. It's not in there. It's not one of those 18 things in Article 1, Section 8. So get out of the way and let them do it. Jimmy Carter started it in 78 or 79, and what have we gotten for it? Just a waste of money. So, anyway.
All right. I turned this up, so maybe it will work for a minute. Okay, here you go.
Given that our budget keeps getting pushed through with these emergencies and last minutes and all that crap, do you think there's any merit in shutting it down? I mean, just voting not to pass any budgets?
Well, I have a degree in accounting, and we got 9 kids. I know the value of knowing where the money is and knowing where it's going, whether it's just for a home, or whether it's for a business, or whether it's for a country. And the one thing that Congress has, particularly the Senate, is the power of the purse. And there are times when it needs to be exercised. There was a time during the Obama administration when the country was shut down because they were not going to release funds for him. And then they took it and made sure that those who pushed for that looked really bad. They went so far as to put chains around the swing sets at the Washington, D.C. parks just so the kids couldn't play on them. And they made sure that every Republican was at fault, and it was pretty unfair, pretty unkind. But whatever could be done to get that under control, whether it's, hey, we have to have a balanced budget, we have to do it, and I'm not afraid not to vote for something. I didn't mention this in there. I have 9 kids, and I don't really need any more friends. I got all I need. And so I don't need to make friends in Washington. If I don't make any, that's okay. And I have my wife, and I'm okay with that. If it's not good for families and households and individuals and businesses, I won't vote for it. And I don't have to vote for it. And I don't want to take credit for that platform. I got that platform from a friend of mine by the name of Mike Morley, who was a Utah legislator. He's been a friend of mine for 30 plus years. He's a Utah legislator from 2005 to 2015. And I followed his career there within the Utah legislature. And there was one time when somebody came up to him and said, hey, you know what? You can vote yes on stuff. And Mike said, not if it doesn't help families and individuals and households. And I asked him the last time I spoke to him, in fact, he was the first person I spoke to about this. I had to speak to Mike just to make sure I wasn't crazy about running. And then I spoke with my wife and told her. But I asked Mike, I said, Michael, did your platform change from 2005 to 2015? And he said, there was no change. It was always the focus of the platform. And if it didn't meet those standards, that criteria, not getting his vote. And people knew that, and they got to the point where they respected him and they didn't mess. I hope to get to that point.
The federal government owns way too much land in Idaho and the other states. Would you introduce legislation to return federal lands to the states where they rightly belong?
I would be happy to. I will admit that there's a lot of stuff I don't know about yet, but I'm trying to get up to speed, kind of like what I did when I changed careers. But I do know a little bit about this one, and I heard it from another candidate. They talked about the profitability of the federal lands that are managed by Idaho versus the federal lands in Idaho that are managed by the feds. And the profitability, I want to say it was tenfold how much more money that they get from tourism and from all the other things, grazing, etc. The feds can barely run the VA. Just get out of the state, please. I'm not trying to be rude to them, but they're limited in their capabilities. They can't get water to the Superdome. It takes them 5 days to do that. So during Katrina. So anyway, yes, absolutely. And I've learned a bit about that. And yes, there needs to be a change there. I want to say 61% of our state is federally owned. We need to get that control back. I don't know exactly how that all happened. I'm learning. But I do know that if given the opportunity, I would certainly get involved in making those changes. Yes, sir.
You said you have a business in Mexico City and you love the people. How do you feel about the border? What's your...
Very good. That's a good question. I have, like I say, I worked in Mexico for 15 years. What I learned was that if you live in Mexico, you're from Mexico, and you reside there, and you have family there, if you can eke out and somehow make a living for yourself, you would never leave. You would not leave your family, and man, you would not leave that food. The pineapple is yellower, the cantaloupe is oranger, and the watermelon is redder. It's phenomenal. I loved going there. And the chicken that I had for lunch was alive that morning. It's unlike the stuff I had from Costco, which was, I don't know when it was killed, but it was a while back. And it's been in the freezer all the time. So they would not leave. So the ones that are coming across, I know that they are the most destitute and desperate. I have friends that I have sponsored from Colombia, and I have seen the time that they wait to go through all those steps. So my feeling is, and I would need to do some more research on this, but I do believe that they need to make it a faster process. One of the guys I work with is a Canadian. He's been waiting almost 2 years now to just get his paperwork updated because they don't have people in the offices to help him get that done. There's a real disconnect in our immigration system. We have people wanting to get in, and we're not enforcing that, and that needs to be done, obviously, because my rule of thumb when I worked down there is if I was in a border town, I would try and get across before nightfall over to the U.S. side because we have a constitution, and it's a little safer. And you can be fluent in Spanish and still get in trouble. So I made sure I was across the border, and I learned some of the tricks beat the sun. You want to be there before it gets dark across the border on the right side. But they need to streamline the process and make it clear. It's almost as though when I listen to my friends who have moved over here, it's almost like they have different programs for. It's like going to college. We have this major here and we have this major here. We've got this program if you're 5'6" or below. We've got this. It's crazy what they have. It needs to be streamlined and improved. I'd love to be involved in something like that. And I will admit that I do have great love for those people. I've served down there. I've worked down there. But they got to follow the rules. They know it and we know it. So I hope that answered your question.
I just feel like there's actually millions coming across. It's not a question of hey, we put our papers in, we want to get. It's like, we are coming and we're going to overrun your country. You're not going to be able, how can we sustain that?
We can't. I agree.
Yeah.
No, they need to immediately put a stop to the crossings. And, pardon me?
Build the wall.
Yes, yeah, and they need to finish it. And it's obviously, that was stopped. The flow of oil was stopped. I hope all these things that we are paying for now at the gas pumps, inflation, we're paying for them now. I hope some people pay for it in 2024.
Okay, I have a question back here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So it's kind of clear that there's like a pervert cover-up going on up at the top of Washington. They covered up the Maxwell case. The thing with Epstein. I guess, would you be willing to try and introduce some kind of a legislation to declassify some of this stuff? They say that this is above our heads and we can't handle it. We can't handle the truth. I think that should be our decision. As a Christian nation with Christian values at the very beginning, the accusations that have been buried are hurtful to not only me as a man, like my grandkids,
Yep.
that aren't even a twinkle in my eye. They aren't a twinkle in my kids' eye. I've got a 9-year-old and a 7-year-old little boy. I'm a single dad. You've got 9 and 9, you said. What are we going to do to protect them?
We have to do exactly what you mentioned. I do not like cover-ups. If they broke the law and it needs to be reported, then it needs to be reported. I'd be happy to be involved with something like that. Always. My wife has watched, she knows a little bit more about the Epstein situation than I do. Finds it very depressing and disturbing, but it needs to come out.
Got prosecuted by James Comey's daughter. Doesn't even make sense. The people that tried to set up President Trump.
Yeah.
are the ones that-
Yeah. No, there's a. What was your first word at the beginning? You said there's. Oh yeah. No, it's a nasty place. In fact, our oldest daughter, she's a graphic designer for Sensi, and she said, at first she wasn't for this at all. She said, "Dad, it's just a pit of vipers. You don't want to go there." And I said, "Yeah, that's okay. I've lived in Colombia. There was tough times there. But you're right. And there's a whole lot of dirty, nasty, filthy stuff. And it's some of it needs to be exposed. I agree."
Okay. So, mine is back to the border. My topic here. I work in an elementary school here in town, and I speak Spanish fluently as well. And I'm working with the kids who are coming up from Honduras. Most of our families that are moving into this area are from Honduras, a few from like Colombia, places like that. I'm wondering about the possibility of looking into what's happening on the California border. I hear a lot about Texas and Arizona, even New Mexico. I hear nothing about Tijuana being a serious port of entry for people. To the point where all the families I'm working with, I know our district received a lot of these families, and they're trying to enter, spread it out and not make it look like there's a lot in one school, and little, shuffling going on, shuffling them around. But the families that I know are good people. They're, here I feel for the right reasons, meaning they're pretty destitute. And they want a good life for their children. So I actually don't totally fault them or feel like we should, go after these families. It's really a tough situation. Most of them are saying they were invited here, that we were invited. And it was kind of like in newspapers, or the word around town was, "You're welcome to come up." Yes. So my struggle is that I don't feel like there's a lot of, what's the word, protection security on that California border. Almost all of the families I'm talking with came across through Tijuana, and they have phones they were given for free. Most of them that I've found the area codes for, because I'm talking with these families and translating for their teachers and our principal, who don't speak any Spanish, they have Riverside, California area codes. And they are, getting food assistance. These are just little things I know just from interacting with these families, but I don't feel like anybody is really watching what's going on that California border. That's my biggest concern. I just wonder if you'll address that and look into that if you're elected.
I would be happy to. I've been on that border quite a bit. I know there's 2 gates in Tijuana, there's 1 gate in Tecate, there's 2 gates in Mexicali, and 1 down in San Luis. And so there is a lot of untamed area, if you will. I've driven along there. They actually put up stations, water stations, so that the immigrants, the illegals coming through, don't die of dehydration. So they know they're coming. They actually make it a little easier for them, so they don't want them dying there. They just want to catch them. So I'd be happy to. It definitely is something of interest to me. There needs to be some equity and a plan. There appears to be no plan whatsoever. There's just nothing. And so I would certainly be happy to work within that group to see what can be done to improve that. Because there's room for improvement. There's a lot of good people that I would love to have in this country as contributing citizens and who are willing to do that. But they need to follow, we need to make it so it's reasonable and sustainable.
Okay, so I just have a comment and then a question for you. On the water stations, why don't we put warming huts for Canadians to come across, or maybe free service, ferry service for Asians and Europeans to come across? I don't understand why these people south of the border get a different deal than everybody else, but that's just my comment. What I'm seeing is the only person who has to obey the bloody law is me. The rich people don't have to obey the law, the politicians don't have to obey the law because they do insider trading. The only one who has to obey the bloody law is me. But my question, though, is I'm a veteran of 2 different military branches.
Thank you.
And don't thank me, it's my job. But I see America destroying other countries all over the world, sending our guys off on some wet dream of some politician to build a nation somewhere, and sending money to get people destroyed all around the world. And I love America, but right now there's a lot of talk about some country that invaded another country unlawfully, but I see America invading more countries than anybody else. And so I guess what I'm asking from you is, would you give me your word? You said you had a daughter that's a graphic designer, that you would not fund or send troops to any foreign conflict that you would not put that daughter on the very front lines of. Because these jackwagons up in DC, they take our kids and they send them off to save some politician. Man, my son's in the Navy. When I saw what happened in Benghazi, and they turned airplanes away that were coming to help, that whoever made that decision is still in our government.
Right.
So I just wondered if you could give me your word that you would not fund or send our troops to some battle, that you wouldn't send that daughter to the very front, hottest part of it. Can you give me your word on that?
I think that's a reasonable request. I think that's something that every congressperson would have to agree to, because there are times when we go and we shouldn't be there. There are other times when we need to be there, And yes, if one of my kids wanted to do it, that would be fine. But I do agree that there are times when we don't belong, and we need to temper that. You mentioned something also about the U.S. doing stuff in other countries that oftentimes they shouldn't. And I know that goes on, and it's gone on in history. We as a country, we're compassionate, but we're also selfish sometimes, and you know, and we're kind, but at other times we're just kind of mean. You know, we have both, but we're a great country. One of the things that has always been around is the fact that, well, being perhaps the most powerful, so for all my life, for most of my life, we've been the most powerful country on earth, and yet our borders don't expand. So we are.
Our borders expand.
Well,
I mean, we're upset with China because they're building islands, right? No, we stole islands. We went to Pacific Islands and said, you guys are Americans now.
Right.
And you don't have any choice in that.
Right.
So at least the Chinese are building their bloody islands. They didn't just go to the Solomons or to Midway and say, you're American. They didn't go to Guam and say, you're Americans now.
Right.
So,
well, it's
I'm just saying,
yep.
I've seen Libya destroyed, Yemen destroyed, Syria destroyed, Iraq destroyed, Afghanistan destroyed, and now I'm supposed to be upset that Russia wants to protect their border. So all I'm saying is every bloody one of them people should have their kids on the front line if they want to send our kids off to some other conflict somewhere. I know that would be unpopular in a lot of crowds, probably this crowd, but America has done more damage throwing our weight around the world than the people we're criticizing today. And I just want your word that you will vote or fund something. And you said that's reasonable, so I'm assuming that is a yes.
Yeah, it is reasonable. If we're in a place where we don't belong, I would be happy to stand up and voice that you won't get my funding, you won't get my vote, because I wouldn't send my own child there.
Okay, we have the race going on, so you're closer.
Pays to choose the right seat. So, what are your feelings towards the United Nations?
Not real good. I think they're borderline useless. I wish they'd get out of New York and go find another place to hang out.
I guess the reason I ask that because of what Dave said, you know, that many times the reasons that we are involved in things we shouldn't be involved in is because of the United Nations, like I said.
Yep.
And that's why we haven't declared a war for many, many years, although we've been in war.
Been in wars, yep.
And the United Nations, as you are probably aware, have been working to take away the rights of the United States to have and bear arms through the United Nations directives. And so far we've been able to keep that away, but would you have any problem in just getting rid of the United Nations and sending them to England or something?
No, we could use that building. In fact, I used to work in commercial real estate. We could lease that thing up real quick. So, yeah, they wouldn't be missed.
So Crapo's been in office for many years. He's on several committees. He's pretty, well, what I've seen in the news, he's pretty quiet. He doesn't really stand up and say, what I mean I'm standing up is, I don't ever see his clips on the news about how he told so-and-so what he thought about election fraud or the border or like really anything. I don't know, maybe somebody's heard him somewhere stand up and be vocal about something that has been happening in the last couple of years. What do you see that you would like, would you like to be on the committee? How do you feel that you would vote differently than he's voted? He's voted, I'm not for sure, but he probably voted for the money going to Ukraine, the billions of dollars are sending over there. He voted for the bailouts, he voted for like the GMC bailout, he voted for the CARES money that they just did, what was that called? I can't remember, like the welfare bailout for closed businesses and whatnot. How would you have voted, and what would you do differently than Crapo has done over the years that we should elect and send you back there to replace him?
First off, I've met Senator Crapo. I found him to be a nice gentleman. And there are some things that he has voted on. Most recently, he voted along with 18 others to reduce the tariffs against China, which President Trump put into place, and he voted to have them softened, if you will. I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't have done that. The bill that went through, and I forget the name of it, it hit around November of last year. What bothered me about that bill more than anything is it was talked about that Idaho was going to get a new bridge and some other stuff, a bridge I'll probably never go over, but there's certain things, and it's like, if we got those things, what did all the other states get? That's got to stop. Just vote on the stuff that you're allowed to vote on. This filling them up with what they call the pork and trying to get all these other favors, and that's what I see as I've watched. I'll vote for your thing if you'll vote for my thing. I don't need that. I'm down to the point, I told you I want to be the commissioner of baseball. This week my wife and I spoke, and I cannot even accept free baseball tickets anymore if I get to Washington. I mean, I have to stay above the board. Fortunately, I've worked with a company called Lockheed Martin. They're a customer of mine, and those guys are not allowed to I can't even take those guys out to dinner. I can go to dinner with them, and they can pull out cash or their own credit card and pay for their own, but I cannot pay for their food, ever. So I've seen it done, and I've seen it done very gracefully and politely. I know what I've got to do. I will not be beholden. Okay, I'm not rich, but I'm not poor, and I have enough that I don't need your handouts, I don't need your bribes, which lobbyists, they're kind of bribes, I think. I don't need that. So that's kind of where I'm at. Now, as far as the other thing, I don't know all of the things that he has voted for. I will tell you that back to the basics again. If it's not good for individuals and households and families or businesses, it won't get my vote. And I don't think that bill in November was good for those. Okay? I'm guessing that probably very few of us will go on that bridge, wherever it is, off in the wilderness there. So I will promise you that I will go through those things. And again, if that bill shows up on my desk that's 2.5 reams thick, I know it's full of garbage. If it's longer than the Constitution, it's probably full of stuff that you're trying to hide. Okay? You're trying to hide it. When they look like my sons, I have a son who's graduating shortly. Well, he's graduating this weekend from Gonzaga with a doctorate and a degree in nurse anesthesiology. I've seen those books. You could hide a lot of stuff. You could hide national treasures in those things. But when they're that thick, we're not doing it. We're just not. We know that they're bad, and it's very annoying. And they get away with it, and it's got to stop. And it can stop if people don't vote for them. Reduce it, make it smaller, make it bite-sized, if you will, so that I can read it in one evening.
If there's another pandemic, which many people say there will be, will you be relentless in fighting against the people of Idaho obeying any kind of mandate or any kind of government overreach by our governor that puts our children or our own health in danger, will you be relentless?
Is that a trick question? And I asked you that because that's not a job for the feds. That's a job for your state. So anyway, but if they want an opinion, yeah,
Well, it came at us originally on a federal level, spread out to the states.
right.
Right, what about the mandates for the federal employees and federal contractors?
Oh, yeah.
That you have influence on?
Yeah, they have influence. Yeah, that was nonsense. I have
Airport.
Airport, yes. I have a friend in Mexico, and years ago he said to me, he said, man, if there is ever a pandemic in the world, in your country, you guys are all dead. I said, what do you mean we're all dead? He said, well, maybe not you because you eat here a lot. You got good immune system. But everybody else, because have you ever seen all those gringos, man? They're just always washing their hands off and, cleaning up. And, they can't go for 10 minutes without sterilizing their hands. But I hated going to the stores, but I went to the stores with a mask on because it's their store. But as far as the schools, my wife and I made good and sure that they knew. In fact, she went down to the school board and told them, my daughter can go to school without a mask. And they still made her do it. So yeah, don't take away my privilege. If I want to take a chance on getting sick, that's my prerogative. Yes, sir.
So I'm just like Dave, I'm gonna make a comment and then a question.
Okay.
Those stores that made you wear a mask were only doing it because the government threatened to shut them down if they didn't. So that's just my comment. The question is on the Patriot Act. It was passed years and years ago, and every year it has to be renewed. What are your views on that, and would you vote to pass that again?
The thing I know most about the Patriot Act is all of the phone numbers. They claim they don't listen to messages, but you can see a pattern. You get someone's phone records over the course of a 6-month period, and you see where their calls came from, who they came from. You can tell a lot about them. You can figure out what religion they are, probably what political party they are, where they like to shop, who their friends are, and so on and so forth. And I think that is probably getting way too close to the Fourth Amendment with search and seizure. So
News today said 20 million households, 20 million phones were tracked. That's in today's news, 20 million.
That's all?
Americans.
That's all? Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, it's based on the way it's set up, they'd probably have to change it before I would vote for it, just because of that one feature. Now, there's other things in there. It's nice to be safe, but at the same time, kind of like what I mentioned there with the outreach of the feds, they treat us like little kids, like we have no common sense, and that's got to stop. It's like I say, it's like watching a parent take care of their adult children when the adult children is perfectly capable. Get out of the house, get a job, and get a place to live. It can be done. And so the states get crippled. And I know that Idaho has taken money from the states that I wish they hadn't. And but again, that's our governor that's done, and the legislature here. But the feds have offered it and they've accepted it. Hopefully, as a resident of the state, we don't continue to do that. That's my hope.
Oh, my answer, correct?
I am concerned about our money and Congress. Would you do anything to try and have Congress take over the printing of the money, be in charge of it again? Or what do you feel about it? Is it a concern to you at all?
Basically, repealing the Federal Reserve, getting rid of the Federal Reserve.
I have to be honest with you. I have not thought about that one. I have not studied that one up. I have been personally to what they call the BIP, the Bureau of Imprinting, the Bureau of Imprinting. I've been to that building. I've seen them make, pardon me? Yes, the BEEP, the Bureau of Engraving and Printing. I've been to that facility. There's signs everywhere, do not touch the glass. My wife touched the glass, and the alarms went off, and it was pretty impressive. But yeah.
I was just so enthralled with how they did it, and I just leaned forward, like this, not thinking, and oh my goodness, how amazing.
I was waiting for the SWAT team to show up, but I'll be honest with you. There's some stuff I haven't looked into. I'm not sure. I just know that I was more concerned, to be honest with you, the inflation and the gas, and those things could have been avoided. And boy, they better pay in 2024. Yes, sir.
Thank you for coming here, first of all. The second thing is, would you consider auditing the Federal Reserve, since they are not part of the federal government or private corporation? Would you?
I would have no problem with that. It is interesting to me at times. I remember back in the 80s and the 90s that it was a Paul Volcker, and they were like celebrities. That's, I don't know that that's really your job. And so I would be happy to, I think that wouldn't be a bad thing. I know there's a lot of manipulation that goes on. This is a big country, and people, I think they can get away with a lot of stuff. And that's where my promise comes in, that I don't care about power. In fact, my son-in-law, his mom called and said, "Why would he want to do this?" And my son-in-law was like, "Well, Mom, it's the power, the prestige, and the money, and all this." And she said, "Oh, come on, Jared, But I don't care about that. It's not my thing. I don't love money, but I hate being poor, because I've had some hard times as a family of 9 trying to make it. It's a little hard at times, but we're sitting much better now, thank goodness, and I'm very grateful for that. When I say hard times, we weren't on the streets. We had a nice house, but it was tight. And but I will say that they could use an audit. They could use a little watchful eye over them. I do agree.
The second question was about the FBI, our great Federal Bureau of Investigation. Has gotten caught entrapping people lately. What would you do to rein back the FBI to an investigative body rather than a law enforcement body?
I had a friend who worked for the FBI, and when he was working for them, they seemed like a pretty straight-up group. Then, over the last 4 or 5 years, it just seems like they've become politicized, and I don't fully understand it. I do not like entrapment. Obviously, that's not fair. My wife almost got a ticket driving here, so kind of entrapment on the freeway there. But no, it's what's going on with the FBI. I always, as a child, and so I always looked at the FBI like, and they always refer to themselves as special agents, so and so. So they were kind of a special group, but they've lost some of their shine, kind of like Disneyland. They've kind of lost their shine here lately, and it's too bad because my friend Tony, I love that guy, and I went to his retirement party, in fact, and a lot of good people there, and but to see what's happened lately is just seems out of character.
All of the U.S. and Idaho families have to budget their budgets every month. We're $30 trillion in debt. What would you do as new senator, because it's going to take a lot of you to get, and no spending. We're not going to be able to spend on much of anything, except Social Security. You can't take that away. But we got to somehow figure out how to get our country fiscally budgeted to where we can exist for the next 30 years. How would, because that's Congress's, they're the money pit, how are you going to control that or help to change things so we can have a balanced budget again?
Thank you. First off, they need to pass a bill every year that they do have a balance, that they do have a budget that they work with. They've got to do that, and they've got to work toward that. The idea of taxing people to fill in, to backfill those missing funds is not the answer. The answer, I believe, and I'm fully convinced, is reducing taxes and giving money so that people who hire people can hire more people and do R&D and create new product lines, more people. And then you have more people working. When people are unemployed, when the tax fee is so high that people can't afford to hire new employees, you've got a huge problem, and you're just going to fall further into that pit. They have to, we've learned it, and it bothers me, no, it annoys me that they have to keep relearning that lesson every so many years, that it does pay to reduce tax rates, allowing people so they can make investments, so they can grow businesses, so they can hire people. The United States thinks they can hire everybody and take care of everyone. They can't. They've got to learn not to think, even think for a minute that they can, because they can't do it. We need good employers. We need people who will hire and pay people so that they can pay a modest tax, so that a lot of people paying a modest tax is much better than trying to take money from a few of the rich. It's not going to work. They've got to go back and remember what worked. Both sides of the aisle made it work. John Kennedy, Ronald Reagan, they both had it working that way. Why can't we just remember those lessons? Because people don't read history, and it's kind of frustrating.
And maybe we could quit spending and sending billions of dollars.
Well, you know,
that shouldn't
yep.
have it.
Someone told me the other day, he said, you know, I need workers. He says, you got these agencies like the Department of Education, they don't even need to exist. Now, what are you going to do with all those people? I'll take some of them, is what he told me. He runs an anodizing company over in Caldwell. And he said, I need them. Fire them from their federal job. I'll hire some of them. Lower my taxes, I'll bring these people in. We need workers. If you look at a federal building, and if somebody asks me, I can tell you how many people work in those federal buildings, usually, just by looking at it. And the answer is about half of them.
Yeah.
Okay? So that's kind of where it's at. So anyway. We could use some of them in our workforce. We'll take the ones that work. We could use them. But you're right. We can't keep doing this. It's got to change. And it won't change overnight, but it can change. And it would start with the first budget. I mean, even like a family that just is a mess financially, put together a budget, know where the money's going, keep up on your checkbook, whatever it takes to make sure that the money's there when you need it. And as a country, we need to practice that. Bad seat this time.
Okay, I'm a lover of freedom, and I think my husband and I have proved it throughout all the years, 25, 30 years, self-employed. We homeschooled our kids for 20 years. We believe in medical independence, and we have proved that and pulled away from many things that could. So we are definitely not off the grid, but we are definitely going into different direction. But we really believe in family, and we believe that the strength of our country is going to come from independence and from freedoms from some of these institutions. Things from everything from the medical, quagmire that it is, to big business that get all the advantages. And we have watched as these institutions get all the advantages in our country, and we've got all the disadvantages. So we have sacrificed a lot to do what we did. And we have struggled financially. We have had to move around. We have wonderful kids that have been very successful at what they're going to do. But I want to know, what are you going to do for families so that they can become more independent from these systems that are stealing our children and stealing our souls and not making us independent? And that's what I'm interested in. I'm interested in the government staying out, but not making it so that it makes it harder for us to survive. So we're trying to get our independence, and it makes it really hard when everything is turned against us, and that everybody else wants to get in the way of us being able to have that freedom. And so we've been, on our shop, we never ask for people to mask. We have been trying to make sure that people have the freedoms that they need, and I want to know where you're at. I mean, a big thing for us is the jab. I want people to be able to, that's just unheard of, that somebody would be able to mandate that. So where are you on all of this?
The more the government stays out of my business, the better. And it starts, for me, it starts with taxes, and it starts with taxes. If your taxes are down and you've got the ability to earn and keep more of your money, that equates immediately to some freedoms. When you have runaway gas prices and runaway food prices because of poor leadership at the very top, shame on them for allowing that to happen. I think it also minimizes our ability to help our position in the world. But as far as the businesses, there's a lot of stuff that helps families and households, and it's hard to get some of it through, but I do think a reduction in taxes is always helpful. What type of business do you have?
We have a retail store, and then we also have a media business as well.
Okay, well, thank you for what you do. I know it's not easy at times. I know that. And I'm open to suggestions as well. And I will say this, I mentioned in my talk there that I will stay informed, and I will keep you informed as well. One thing that one of the representatives from this state does is he does a regular monthly newsletter that's on his website, and you can download it and so forth. And I really like that. And it just keeps people aware. You don't need to know every little thing. You don't need it in minutia, but there are some things that everybody should be aware of, and I think that's helpful. And I would like to get feedback from people, because there's a whole lot of stuff going on. Some of it cannot be handled by the feds. They're not supposed to. Thus, those are the states. But the other stuff that can be handled by the feds and help from the feds, they should reach out to those. And I'm all ears. You let me know, and I'd be happy to see if it is something that is rightfully our responsibility, if you will, from a federal level. You bet.
I really like what you mentioned very much in passing earlier, that we're not studying our own history. And I am very concerned about what's going on in schools. Like I said earlier, I work at a school. We have 4 children, ages 12 to 18 at home right now. 2 of them are in the public schools, and 2 of them we transferred over to American Heritage Charter School, which has been wonderful. The reason we moved those kids is because I was helping a teacher, and I was cleaning out my daughter's desk, and I found a folder full of papers that were labeled UDHRs of the United Nations. And I learned that they were studying the 30 articles of the United Nations founding documents. and this was 5th grade, and she was not studying our American founding documents. They weren't learning those. And so, and all of those papers were kept at school. They were not allowed to take them home. 5th grade teachers were actually not thrilled about it. They didn't really want to teach it. They were kind of like, necessary evil, we gotta do this, you know, get our paycheck, I guess. And I just was so, I was livid. I was really mad. And the glossary of terms they used, they gave false definitions of the words to the kids. It was very shocking. And I took them home and showed my husband, and we decided that it was time to get them out of that school. There's a lot going on in the schools right now that I think many of us, maybe a lot of you are already out of that phase of having kids in schools, but one of our sons in 9th grade here at Idaho High was shown a history video right before Christmas break, mocking Jesus, our Savior, and, you know, basically claiming he was a drunkard and all this stuff. It was a funny, silly video, YouTube video that the kids had to watch for history class. We have kids in our elementary school. Since the COVID closures, we're seeing kids way behind, huge gaps in learning because of the closures, which makes sense. But those kids were sent home Chromebooks, a free Chromebook to be kept at home. Parents signed off on the technology agreements, but were not taught or told that they really needed to get their own protections in place at home on their own Wi-Fi. And a lot of parents were, I don't know, they just weren't very careful or cautious with those Chromebooks. And we believe that there's been a huge uptick and probably, you know, just a lot of problems with internet exposure to pornography and stuff and such that's going on based on what kids are saying and drawing and talking about. So there's just a lot of things going on. Anime and manga is a type of animated videos and books, graphic novels, and those are also becoming an issue where kids are self-identifying as animals now. Cats and wolves are the biggest ones we're seeing. Children are coming to school with confusion about their gender. We have a 1st grader who identifies, she's a girl, she identifies as a boy now because her mom encouraged her, and her parents are now getting divorced. It's a big mess. And then we just had a 4th grader, you know, come out as a girl who's come out as a boy now. And so basically there's just so much confusion and so many problems in our public schools that are just out of control. And so I just wonder, how do we, you know, get the reins in on this and get things, I know you talked about abolishing the DOE, the Department of Education, but what can we actually do to really turn this around and get back on track and get these kids educated on our own founding, our own history?
Well, I know that they've changed the name of civics and history to social studies, which opens up a broad range of stuff. We have a 16-year-old who's a sophomore in high school, and sometimes I'm concerned that she's not doing her homework, but she gets decent grades. I shouldn't complain. But these things they're suddenly coming to the surface, and they're coming very fast. I don't know the exact reason for it, but I could be wrong, but I think that there's so much that is coming down from Washington, from the DOE, and the superintendents of the states either weren't ready for it, or they just don't know how to handle it, don't know how to deal with it, and they're getting, in between the unions and the pressure that is there, it's really become a mess. I remember years ago there was a team of 2 teachers at our oldest daughter's school, and everybody wanted their kids to be in that class. Well, our daughter got into that class. My wife was there one day with them, and she said, "Hey, you guys, when do you do the Pledge of Allegiance?" And they said, "Oh, we just don't have time for it. We're really slammed here. We've got to." Also, that was it. She was out of the class. The rest of our kids were never allowed to go to their class. And if that was the biggest problem we had back then, that'd have been great. But now this other nonsense. I had a friend, a very good. You talked about the gender issue. Any math teachers in here? Anybody ever taught math? Would you teach a 5-year-old calculus? You wouldn't do it. There's just some things that they don't need to know about, okay? They just, at some point, they might be ready for it. I was never ready for it, for calculus. We had to take it though as part of the accounting program, but I was never ready for it. But there are kids who are exposed to stuff that they never should be exposed to, and it's really sad, and it's sad that their parents don't protect them. And you mentioned that with, you know, that's a sad situation. They're going to be there. I apologize. You know, I think more than anything else, people need to do their job. If it's not their job, then get out of the way. If it is your job, you really have to stand up and you have to answer some tough questions, and especially on the education side. Otherwise, people are not, they're going to be taking their kids home and teaching them there. So if you want a job, Mr. Teacher, you need to get with it and work with the parents, because I think they speak a good game, but these unions really don't want them working with the parents. They want to force their agenda that comes from Washington, from Common Core to the other things, the other acronyms you mentioned, and it's not good. I'm so glad my youngest is only 16. My youngest is already 16, rather, because I feel I'm worried about my grandchildren.
Okay, we got a question up here.
I know you mentioned right at the beginning that if it wasn't constitutional, you would not be implementing that. You would not be voting for something that would not fit within the frames of the Constitution.
Right. I think that's important.
Unfortunately, a lot of things have been implemented that are not within the frame of the Constitution now. I had a conversation with Senator Crapo years ago, and at that time he indicated that they only had control over 1/3 of the budget. The other 2/3 of the budget was on autopilot, incrementing and automatically, and they had no control over it with the people they had in the Senate, at least in the House. So you're going to be faced with a very difficult situation.
I know.
You have very little control of.
Yep. And it'll be frustrating.
And it will be frustrating.
Yep.
And what do you propose? I mean, over 50% of our nation is on the dole right now. So how do you deal with that? How are you going to approach that and move us back towards the Constitution?
You can't do it alone. One person can't do it. You have to find out who your colleagues are, who your real associates are, and if you'll do that, that's what I plan to do. That's the only way to make a difference. I'm convinced you cannot do it alone. There are some very good senators in the Senate, but you can't do it alone. You just cannot. And so my goal would be to find those people who share my same goals, desires, concerns, and put together programs. In fact, I would not mind if I don't care if I'm remembered, but if you're going to remember me, I don't want you to remember me because I was a nice guy. I would like you to remember me because I was fair, and that I got rid of some laws that really never should have been put in there. I think there's a lot of stuff that needs to be repealed and that does not need to be renewed, and we need to get rid of some of that stuff. I am convinced that every time they gather, and they start every January 3rd of every year, we lose freedoms. Every time a Congress gets together, we lose freedoms. And for some dumb reason, these people think that if they get a law passed or a bill passed, they've done their job. No, you haven't. You know, you took rights and freedoms and privileges away from a sector of people that they never did you any harm. Why? What's the deal here? And so I would not mind if that's the only thing I ever did was help to repeal some garbage that's out there as far as the laws go. But I would also like to be remembered as being fair. I don't want to be a nice guy. I don't want to be a creep. I want to be fair, and I do want to be polite. I can even be polite to Nancy Pelosi. Polite, but that's as far as it goes, okay? My one friend said, never mind, I won't tell you what he said, but about my first time if I ever meet her. But there's one thing I do not like about Washington, and I think it makes it so you can almost not listen to the political radio shows, is the vitriol and how, can you just be polite and I can understand you have a different opinion, fine, I respect that. I don't agree with it, but at least we can respect. I wish more of that existed. Because we go home and we teach that. Why in the workplace do they act that way? It's just, I'm not good with it.
I first have a comment. Our opposition has not played fair. We are not going to win if we play fair. We are going to have to use their tactics against them. Second of all, after listening to this young lady about what was revealed, we can't just send the UN packing. We have to get out of the UN. Their intent is for the New World Order. They're working to break up our families, break up our morals, break up our strengths that we have through our families and our beliefs in God and our Judeo-Christian beliefs. That has got to be the number one thing that someone would do to strengthen families and strengthen our country. Their complete intent is to demoralize us, take away our strength by breaking up families, isolating each of us from each other. The 6 feet where we don't touch each other, we become angry, we become bitter, and then we become fearful, and we're easier to be controlled. I would ask you to make getting out of the UN your priority for families.
That's not unreasonable, I have to admit. In fact, isn't there, near Burley, isn't there a sign just between Burley and the Y that says, "Get out of the United Nations"?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've always liked that sign. It's getting a little old, they need some paint on it. But yeah, I like that sign.
Yeah, Dorothy's on there right
Oh, Dorothy Moon's up there right now. How did she get on there? I've had signs taken down. She gets to put hers right on there. You know, she gets to put it on there because it needs a paint job. Maybe that was the deal.
Okay, I'll take 2 more questions,
Okay.
and then we'll wrap it up for tonight. Well, 3 more because I have one.
Okay.
If one of these guys doesn't get mine answered, so we'll start here, and then we'll go to Tom.
Okay, I want to know kind of where you stand on freedom of speech and protecting the Second Amendment, because I hear that tech companies can censor speech because they're private companies, but yet a Christian baker who makes wedding cakes, it's a private company. He doesn't get to discriminate who a Christian wedding photographer doesn't get to discriminate. But our Congress people, lame individuals that they are, tell me that, well, they're private business so they can get away with it, but other private businesses can't get away with it. So I just want to know where you stand on freedom of speech and protecting our Second Amendment.
As far as the Second Amendment goes, we had better be vigilant, because you mentioned that they lie and they cheat and they say, oh, that those guys, the anti-gun groups, they're like secret combinations, man. They are nasty, nasty, and they will do anything in their power, and they'll lie about it. I have no doubt. I've seen that. And so we need to keep doing what we're doing. And the NRA, I filled out a form for those guys. I actually got I think an AQ, meaning an A rating, but a Q because you've never voted for anything, because I've never been in a federal position. But we've got to watch that one and never quit, because we lost it one time for a while, got it back, and now we better hang on to it. And it took a while to get it back, but we did, and now we have to do it. So good for the NRA. They do a wonderful job, But we better be vigilant. As far as freedom of speech, it almost kind of started back in the Clinton years with the politically correct business. I work with some guys that aren't politically correct, and it's rather refreshing. And I'm interested to see how it goes with that. I don't know enough about it. I just know that we have that right, and it needs to be protected. But there are ways that people find to stifle and to censor. I am impressed, not impressed, but I'm very interested in the immediate reaction that took place when Elon Musk put in the bid for Twitter. And to see them come up with that disinformation group and how fast they did that. And yet, they didn't need it while they had full control of everything.
They already had it ready.
Yeah, oh, it is. It's as though they had it ready. Maybe when Elon bought the 10%, they thought, well, hey, something's going on here. That guy could afford it, and he's a disruptor. I like these disruptors. You know, I don't use Uber very much, but I got to hand it to the guy for disrupting, you know, the taxi situation. I mean, the Airbnb guy, these disruptors are, they're unique and they're helpful, I believe. What Musk did, I think, that'll be real interesting to watch. And the fact that they came up with that so fast, I think you're right that they probably had it already set, just in case, and they're doing everything they can. So it's time to fight back. And fortunately, Twitter can help us with that. In fact, for the first time ever, I thought, I'm going to get one. I'm going to get a Twitter account.
The United Nations flyer there in Berkeley, that was probably put there by the John Birch Society. The John Birch Society has been trying to get us out of the United Nations for many decades. There was a bill, I believe, introduced by Congressman Ron Paul a few years ago, American Sovereignty Restoration Act, I believe it's H.R. 1146, which would withdraw membership from the United Nations. From what I've learned about the United Nations wants one world religion, they want an international criminal court, they want to be in charge of the education. Most everything that they do is wrong and unconstitutional, higher taxes, and we pay a good share of the bill. So I would like to see somebody in Congress or the Senate introduce again the, I think it's called the American Sovereignty Restoration Act, H.R. 1146, to get us to withdraw from the United Nations. It's such a waste of money for us to be involved in the UN.
Yep.
And every war we go under United Nations resolutions. That's why there are no-win trillion-dollar wars and the borders are wide open. It's insanity, and it's bordering on treason. What the United Nations is doing.
The teacher in the back. Miss, the fact that that stuff was in a desk in Idaho Falls, that's really kind of scary. I could see it in New York, I could see it in LA, Seattle, but the fact that it's in Idaho Falls, that's really scary. And I'd be happy to take up something like that. I've always admired that plaque as I go past. We have friends and family down in the Salt Lake area. I always see that and I thought, you know, we gotta get out of there. So I'll look at that. Now, I believe it is that same gentleman, Mr. Paul, who wrote the bill to eliminate the Department of Education. He wrote that up 2 years ago in 2020. So he's someone I would like to talk to. Rand Paul, yes. The son, okay. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, we'll do one more and then me.
Okay.
I just wanted to make a comment first. To the lady back here who was saying that we need to adopt their tactics to win, I have to respectfully disagree. Because we cannot win unless we're on God's side. And if we sell our souls to the devil and start lying and playing their games, we will not be on the right side. And we have no hope for success unless we are on God's side. So I think we have to, keep with our principles and our integrity and pray with all our mights and work with all our hearts, and we'll find success that way. But
Thank you.
so I was going to ask you if you happen to be familiar with the movement toward the calling of a constitutional convention.
Yes, I've heard of it.
Because there are
the
very,
seventh?
the Fifth Amendment.
Yeah.
There are very prominent conservatives even who are calling for a constitutional convention, but from what I understand, it would be extremely risky because there's nothing to prevent a runaway convention where they could totally rewrite our Constitution. And depending on who happens to be in charge and what direction it goes, we could be in a really bad way. So I just wondered if you had any thoughts or just maybe...
I don't have very many. I just know that you can. I looked at when states signed up for it, and it's like the waves of the sea. Sometimes there's the 1 year they'll have 3 or 4 jump in, and then you'll have 2 or 3 years where nobody gets on. And so little by little they're adding more to it. They're still a little ways off. I need to do some more research on it, but I have heard of it, and I know that it's picking up steam in as much as the last bundle of groups, the last bundle of states that joined it, I want to say it was the most that joined in a single year. That's the most recent. That's all I know about it.
Okay, just because there are actually a lot of conservatives who are falling in line with that, but I find that very, very dangerous. And I definitely just want to make my opinion known that the right way to go is to change laws through the legislature,
Absolutely.
not through a constitutional convention.
Right. Thank you. And he caves again.
He's still making concessions. So I have a question, but you don't have to answer it.
Okay.
These Council on Foreign Relations and the deep state, they play dirty. Yeah. Just like they've talked about.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do? They couldn't intimidate you, but what if they threaten your family if you don't capitulate to what they want you to do? You don't have to answer that. I just want you to think about it, because there's a lot of people in the picture.
Mm-hmm.
They give up their values, they give up everything because their families are threatened, their grandchildren are threatened. So
That's a tough one, but I will tell you this. If they had my wife has already told me, if you don't back down. If they've got me, I'm good. It'll make for a good TV show. Make for good theater. She said, but my wife personally told me, you do not cave into their threats if they're threatening me.
Well, they're threatening the what? They're threatening the children, threatening the grandchildren.
Right. That's the grandchildren. You mentioned that, and I can see my 9-year-old grandson waiting by the bus. And it's one of those things where you've got to make up your mind probably beforehand and know what's going on. Keep your children aware. I've lived in a country for a while where a lot of that went on in Colombia. And the people that served in public positions, elected positions, man. I used to think the only way you would want to do that is if you had no family. So it's a tough one. And thank you for saying you don't have to answer. I can only answer for my wife.
Yeah.
That I haven't talked to the kids about that. Boy, I hope that never happens.
It will come. It will come because they're play dirty.
Yeah.
I just wanted Sheila, I wanted to tag team with her. I'm a JBS chapter leader here in Idaho Falls. On your website, is it possible to send you a great film on the con-cons that you could get an education on it? Is that available?
Is it something that you could? There's a place for
a link.
Yeah, send me a link. Yeah, I've got it. There's an email there. It's hello at Turnbull for USSenate.com.
Okay, great.
We were going to put info, but one of my kids said, no, put hello instead of info. Okay, whatever. Anyway.